Welcome to the US Daily Brief channel. The occupation-oriented war that Russia started in Ukraine may be leading it to internal collapse. Putin has a lot of trouble, and Russian military losses in Ukraine seem to be the least of them. When we look at it from a wide window at the moment, Russia has taken almost all of the West against it, and its most important rival seems to be the USA. Of course, Russia's military losses in the last 4 months are huge, but these are not vital losses for a large army like the Russian army. Here, the resistance of Ukraine and the losses inflicted on the Russian army are, of course, an undeniable fact and a great success. Although the Russian army is struggling against Ukraine, it is a fact that it has sufficient reserves and ammunition. However, the Russian army cannot renew itself in the short term due to Russia's technology war and sanctions with the USA, Europe and Ukraine. It also seems unlikely that the Russian army will restore its lost reputation against Ukraine. There are also many things that Russia cannot take back. There is no doubt that there is a second Cold War period between Russia and the USA at the moment, and when we consider the 1946 to 1991 period, the standoff between Russia and the USA may last for another 50 years. We said that the real loss of Russia is not in the army. Russia's main loss is the relations of the West, the Baltics and the Scandinavian countries with Russia. As a meaningful result of this, the official application of Sweden and Finland to the North Atlantic Alliance can be given as an example. Another and most important issue is what Russia has lost within itself, especially due to the heavy sanctions imposed on Russia by the USA and Europe. The real blow is the blow to the future of Russia, especially in technology, defense industry, weapons technologies, banking systems, and many areas from automotive to aviation sector. The USA has been applying very harsh sanctions to Russia since the first day of the Ukraine invasion, and it also shows that it is on the side of Ukraine with weapons shipments to Ukraine. However, the latest sanctions against Russia are seen as sanctions that may concern not only today but also the entire future of Russia. The US is openly waging a technology war against Russia with its sanctions. Now, the technology giants of the USA are withdrawing from Russia one by one as part of the sanctions imposed on Russia. So far, about 100 companies have stopped their operations in Russia or have withdrawn altogether. Another hard blow came to Russia this week from technology, and IBM, one of the most important technology companies in the USA, announced that it plans to withdraw from the Russian market due to the conflict in Ukraine. Let me be frank. We have suspended all operations in Russia, Arvind Krishna, CEO of the company, said in a statement. It was stated that the company also shut down its Russia-based website. The site displays the message, "This content is no longer available." IBM announced the suspension of commercial activity in Russia, the end of software sales, and the halting of cooperation with Russian defense companies. This is a really big problem for Russia. You could even call it the beginning of the end. Because Russia mostly uses Western software and technologies in its weapons software, bank databases and all kinds of infrastructure they use. The withdrawal of these technologies from the region will endanger not only the present but also the future years of Russia, just as it was in the Soviet era. Right after Russia began invading Ukraine, the alliance of the United States and other countries established some of the most aggressive technological sanctions against Moscow in history. This reminded us of NATO's strategy during the Cold War. Efforts to stifle Russian technology during the Cold War were carried out at that time, and the Soviet Union was sought to be distanced from technological developments. The USA built a grand strategy on this foundation and continued it consistently for many years. The US administration at the time concluded that disengaging the Soviet Union from technology could have long-term damage to Soviet economic power and the resulting Soviet military power. The basis of the sanctions was to hinder the growth of Russian technology in the long run and to completely prevent the steps to be taken in this regard. Analysis of Russian weapons seized and destroyed in Ukraine showed that Russian equipment is deeply dependent on computer chips produced in the West. US officials say that although Russia has been stockpiling US equipment for years, global restrictions on sending advanced technology to Russia are hampering the country's military capacity. As a result of serious research on this subject, 2 analysts who researched on this subject have revealed Russia's dependence on US technologies with all its reality. Even the strongest industries of the most powerful countries cannot avoid integration and interdependence. Especially considering today's world, This is unlikely to be possible. But while their impact on the Russian military is significant, that's not the point. Russia would not be able to replace battlefield losses with new production. So slowing down Russian tank building will not be decisive. In other words, Russia currently has a high number of tanks, and the lack of spare parts and technology does not have an immediate effect on the Russian army. But the important question is the long-term impact on Russia's ability to compete technologically. The real impact will be on the civilian sector, not just the military. Some of the effects are already being felt. The Russian airline industry is suffering from the effects of the sanctions and will likely suffer even more in the coming months as spare parts are shortened and maintenance time is reduced. At the same time, Russia's weapons are based on superior technology. From cruise missiles launched to planes, tanks and even ships, they all have a technological infrastructure and renewal. Considering that the majority of these are based on Western technology, sanctions that do not affect today will greatly damage Russia's future in the future. Regardless of the outcome, the Russian army, which will leave the Ukrainian war with a great wound, will try to compensate its own losses at the end of the war. However, in order for this compensation to be possible, it is necessary to have Western technology, which has the habit of using it. But this seems to be an unreachable point at the moment. For this reason, Russia will begin to roll up its sleeves to produce its own technology. Here, too, two main problems will arise in front of Russia. One of these two main problems is the lack of software and the other is the training of qualified personnel to produce this technology. Replacing these two requires a process that will take many years. In fact, it remains unclear whether there is a situation such as replacing the software. Because the phenomenon we call technology is advancing exponentially every day, especially in the field of software. Russia's future in many fields from technology and defense industry to automotive may turn towards China. However, in the current situation, it seems that China cannot afford Western sanctions and is not very enthusiastic about technological cooperation against Russia. Russian President Putin can neither trust China nor keep its technological infrastructure stable. However, he had to put all of these situations on the table while embarking on the invasion of Ukraine. The future of sanctions was very likely, and Putin nevertheless began the invasion. The first thing that came to mind was the possibility of Putin ending the occupation quickly and making the West forget this situation. But was this a possibility? Apparently not. At this point, Russia cannot go around the sanctions and it seems unlikely that it will find an ally to fix these deficits. What Putin will do is not a question that can be answered in the short term. Whatever happens, Putin is in trouble, and even if Russia eases its aggressive stance from now on and tries to sway it with small deals, it will not ease the sanction.